What a powerful clap.
Was.
We're good? Coming down in 3, 2, and 1. First of all, Dallas, thanks so much for inviting us here to Dine Alone. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous spot. What can you tell us about where we are right now?
This is a building built on imagination, really. You know, Joel, my longtime manager and owner of Dine Alone Records.
You gotta say his last name.
Joel Carrier.
Okay.
Yeah, Joel Carrier. He bought this building as a shell years and years ago. I can't even remember the year where he actually acquired it. And you know, we're in a sort of like industrial-ish area of Toronto. It wasn't like a burgeoning part of the city really that yet. And yeah, Joel had this vision, right? Like he was following some other things that he had seen in his travels and stuff as like where like a place, kind of like a clubhouse vibe where you could house, because we're all internal, right? We have a record label. The management is Joel as well, and there's all these other labels that come off of Dine Alone, and so it was like trying to find a place where you could have all of that, but also have a record store, have a venue space, have an office upstairs, have an entertaining space, just like an all-encompassing building built on the imagination that had carried us, you know, from St. Catharines to a point where we could even think of something like this, you know? And yeah, that's kind of it.
Great spot.
Yeah, became really handy during the pandemic.
I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I've always been curious about you? Why do hockey people like you so much? What is it about your music? Because everyone that I saw on my way to work this morning, I was talking to our assistant program director at the Fan. Oh, I just listened to Dallas like last night before I went to bed. Talked to Jeff Jackson at Wasserman, Connor McDavid's agent. Love Dallas. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, I'd love to meet the guy. Love his music. Seen him live so many times, me and my wife, etc. Like everyone in hockey that we talk to about you adores you. Why?
Well, I would maybe say that they're a bunch of softies. You know, all hockey people are secret softies.
You won't see that over the next 8 weeks.
You know what I mean? And like, I really don't know the answer to it, but I know, like, for instance, some of the guys that I've become friends with, I can tell why they like the music is I think they hear something that resonates with them in the lyrics, not just the music, you know? And like, cause I think a lot of these guys they're deep thinkers, you know? They don't get a lot of credit for it, but like, in order to play the game that way, play the game at such a high level, you have to be, you know, you have to be able to maintain a lot of ups and downs, right? And I think I've always used my music as a way to cope with those ups and downs, and I write about that. That's sort of where I like to write about those uncomfortable, it's like the corners. Do you know what I mean? That's what I like to write about. I like writing about those difficult moments in life and how to get through them. And so maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I don't know. You know, I've always had this, like, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of big, tough, strong dudes who tell me my music really helps them kind of deal with their emotions and their feelings.
I believe it.
And
Is there a song in particular that you think really resonates?
no,
with
but
them?
like, okay, so Rye, let's take Rye for an example.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about Ryan O'Reilly.
Ryan O'Reilly, yeah, sorry. I don't know why this is his jam, but like one of his, like, what he calls a sneaky pump up song is like a song from my first record that's just like a 6.5 minute slow, real weepy, sad song. You know, it's called Hello, I'm in Delaware.
And there goes my life, passing by with every departing flight.
And that's where he puts that on before he's about to go on the ice. You know, I have no idea how that gets you to go out and possibly fight somebody or, like, you know, take huge hits or give them out or, you know, but for some reason that's a song that maybe it's a childhood thing because he listened to that when he was younger. Or his brother got him into the music. I don't know. Right. But I've had a lot of conversations with these big dudes, like, especially coming from Alexis in the hardcore scene. Right. And then branching off and, like, you know, sort of showing my vulnerability.
See, I think I'm glad you got there.
Do you
I
think
think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think because you have that Alexis side to you, that it seems like okay, it's okay for me as a hockey player, hockey person, whatever,
Right.
to feel like this because you still appeal to the Alexis side of them as well.
Sure.
Does that
yeah.
make sense? Like, am I
Absolutely.
reaching for something
No,
here
I
that's
don't
not
think
there?
so. I think we would be, for us not to correlate that, like we would just be removing an entire chapter of it all, right? It's like, how can it not be part of it? It's because it's like, I started in this one band that, you know, people thought, oh, that's how he is. And then I showed another side of myself and they're like, oh, he can do that too, right? But it's like the aggressive stuff almost gives credence to the vulnerable side because it's like it shows that I can be angry or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's like we're all men of a certain age. We know how we were raised and what era we were raised in, and we're not supposed to talk about. We're not supposed to show vulnerability, right? So I think part of it is that. I think it's just like I give them, agency to feel okay about their emotions. I don't know. You know, that might be the answer.
Before Game 2 of the Toronto-Tampa series, we're going to air a piece where you sat down and did an interview with Ryan O'Reilly at Massey Hall in Toronto. And actually, in this beautiful building we're in, there are 2 removed Massey Hall seats from where the building was first built in 1894. I think stuff like that is really cool.
Yeah.
But tell us how that came about and tell us about the conversation.
Yeah, well, okay, so obviously I've known Rye for a bunch of years now. I met him when he was... I heard somebody had told me that there was a kid that played for the Avalanche that liked my music, but I didn't meet him until he was on the Sabres, you know? Because my buddy Kyle Quincy had sort of connected us, right? Because I don't remember if they actually played together in Colorado.
In Colorado, I think they would have overlapped.
They knew each other from just little town Ontario, right? Like Quince is from Orangeville, I think, and Rye's from Bayfield. It's like, you know.
Not far.
Yeah, that's, by the way, just to go back to I think there's a bit of that too. There's a lot of that small townness that you can't escape, just being from one. And I think a lot of these guys that I meet, we just have that easy kinship of like being from somewhere, kind of getting away from it, but still wondering if you can hold on to it. You know what I mean? There's just that like, that sort of like-mindedness, I think, that exists in it too. But with Rye, we just sort of like connected and became just messaging pals, right? And again, I think we were able to talk to each other because he liked my music. I think he's a good hockey player, but we live a similar life where you're just doing this thing you did when you were younger, but it became your life. You travel, you kind of got to perform. There's all these similarities that you can just, you don't have to talk about. They're already there, right? So common ground. But a couple of weeks ago, I got a call asking if I'd be interested in doing a little sit down with Rye for a segment for Hockey Night in Canada, which is obviously, I'm going to say yes to that. But I think the fact that it was at Massey and it's in Toronto, obviously, because Rye's now a Leaf, there was this real kind of cool opportunity for us to just talk about our friendship, but also talk about the similarities of what we do. And he's a huge music guy, and obviously I'm a big sports guy, so I think it'll be cool.
I remember being so cool for me, obviously just getting hanging with you guys and such, but also seeing you with the Alice in Chains guys and how, like, talking about them, how it's like this is what you got into music. And honestly, it made it a lot easier for me to talk to you. It was so special and such, and here you there with them, the guys have done so much for you. It was just kind of cool. It kind of put like,
well, it's like that inspirational relay kind of thing where it's like I feel like we can get caught up. I don't know if you feel this way, but I think we get caught up in what we're doing that we forget the way people will perceive it. Maybe before you met me, before you know me, you think, oh, this guy's music means something to me, or he's this, you look up to guys who play in bands, but then you meet them and you're like, oh, it's just a person.
Yeah.
Right? But then you can see me interacting with Jerry Cantrell, who's literally the guy who made me want to play guitar.
Yeah, and that's, like, for me, to be able to see that was kind of like, it was crazy, like, just looking back.
Do you remember this? Funny. Do you remember that night your curfew was like 9:30, and Chains went on at 9, and you were like, I'm gonna watch a bit, and I'm like, okay, and then it's like 9:25, and we're on the side of the stage watching them, and I'm like, you gotta go, and you're like, maybe I could stay for it. I'm like, you gotta go. Like, you gotta go. You're in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you know? But you did go, and you won.
When you talked with him,
Yeah.
what was the highlight of your conversation?
Well, I think it was us, it was neat seeing Rye open and talking, because I think for him too, what was nice was it was a different thing, sort of a different way for him to approach a media requirement.
Yeah, he doesn't have to talk to Jeff, so I can see how he really liked that.
But you understand that, right? It's like, I think he felt maybe like just okay to just chat because it was me asking him questions and vice versa, But I think it was cool for him it was nice to see how in awe he was of the building. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because he's seen shows there, but you come in and it's empty and you're up on stage and you're standing there and it's like, even though it's been renovated, it's still a pretty daunting place to. And then I told him about the first time I played there, and that was a cool little exchange.
And you want to hear how your voice sounds. Like selfishly, like if I'm in an empty Massey Hall standing on stage, I'm most curious what my voice sounds like.
Oh yeah, man. And you remember when you were asking me off camera about buildings and like what makes it sound good? I mean, I think the design of that place is part of it, but I think it just does a lot of the work for you. I remember that was my sentiment when I walked off stage after the first time I sang there. I was so nervous about it because, you're almost stepping out into such history, right? But I remember coming off stage just so relaxed because I realized the building's doing it all for you. You know what I mean? You just got to open your mouth.
Is Massey Hall your favorite venue?
It's up there for sure.
Give me a big venue that you love and maybe another small venue you love.
Yeah, I mean, those are my favorite size venues, like the theaters that are about 2,500, because I feel like they're big enough to feel grand and feel like this moment, but they're intimate enough where you don't lose anybody in the back, Like I'm lucky that I've gotten to play a bunch of the hockey arenas. I've gotten to play, like last summer, Alexisonfire, we opened for Rage Against the Machine in Quebec in front of 90,000 people. I mean, you can't quantify that.
What does it feel like?
It's unimaginable,
Like, do you have to calm yourself down? Like, are you almost going out there like it's like like a hockey player playing game one of the playoffs where they have to tone themselves down.
Well, especially because when we're going out there to play, like we know there's going to be some people that know our band, but we're going on before one of the best live bands ever and one of the biggest rock bands ever and a band who hasn't really played that much. And people are rabid for these shows, right? So we had to kind of go out there and we were, we had our chest puff up because we were like, we got to lay waste to this stage, we got to like prove that we belong in this spot.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line where you don't want to, especially like you go out and you sing as hard as you can sing on note one. What do you got left for the last note? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So there was a lot of that, like a lot of us looking at each other like, but then you look at 90,000 people and it's hard to explain.
Let me ask you about that sensation, looking out there at 90,000 people. I mean, that is just like an absolute mass of humanity. And geez, I'm reaching here. I think it might be Napoleon, but I got the quote right, which is quantity has a quality all of its own.
Yeah.
When you're looking at that volume of people and they're all staring at you, I'm always curious what happens in between the ears and how do things not change? Like, okay, this is what we plan to do, but then there's this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question because I think I've struggled with that the whole time I've been doing it, right? Because especially with music and art, there is no right or wrong necessarily. There's no winner or loser. There's no good or bad. There is just perception, And so you never want to go out and sort of like play and then use that moment as a barometer for how you're going to change because you did it in that moment, right? It's not like you won 16 games and you're hoisting the cup and going, okay, we're the best this year, right? And you can probably use that against your next contract and all that stuff. With what I do, it's never about anything like that. So I've always had a difficult time balancing, was that a good moment and should I feel good about it? Or should I just stay totally as measured as possible and go like, let's try and do that again the next night? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And not let it try to change this person who I just wanted to make music and I'm still doing that and I feel good about that. Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting divide for sure.
I always look at it as have have a process and approach, and then see what the moment takes you.
Yeah.
It's like Jeff and I always laugh about my grandmother's line, like, you
Great.
plan, God laughs, right?
Right.
Like, I'm sure you have a similar approach to every concert to be prepared.
Yes.
And then there's probably nights you walk up there and say, wow, like, this crowd is dead. I better get them going.
Absolutely.
And there's other nights like that night with Rage Against the Machine where you're like, we don't have to do anything. Like, we're going.
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Yeah,
We're going.
absolutely. Like, or you walk out on stage and like note one, something breaks, or like I go to hit my guitar and it's just in that second, my amp has decided to not work. We're totally fine. We did 2-hour sound check and then you get up and then you have to audible, right? And that's like a big, like we opened for, 2 weeks ago, we opened for the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the stadium in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a crazy experience, right? We get dropped into this one-off show. They're doing this world tour. They have all these people opening for them, but I did the opening slot in Vancouver, right? But it's like you're flying in for a one-off show to go stand in a stadium that's got 50,000 people in it, and you're sort of like huddled into where you can fit around their production. And you just got to be like, okay, let's just be a great band, I guess. Like, let's just hope that when we start, we're a good band. And, the 2,000 people that maybe know my music are stoked. And the other 48, we hopefully don't bore them to death. You know what I mean?
I assume that did not happen.
No, I thought we killed it, to be honest.
No doubt.
My friend Kenny, who's my longtime guitar tech, he came up to me. He was like, "I think we finally found a building that can contain your voice," which was a great teammate.
Pretty massive.
It was a nice that made me feel good for a minute.
So, like, I'm curious about that, like the dynamic. Like, I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I read Anthony Kiedis' book. I can, like, just reading his book, I would guess he's a bit of a different dude. And in the creative business, you probably meet like all kinds.
Yeah.
Who was maybe the craziest person you opened for, and maybe who was the one who surprised you the most, or you even worked with, because you've led shows obviously too.
Yeah. Well, I did have like this beautiful interaction with, like, I didn't really meet any of the guys in the Chili Peppers, but I feel like the Flea interaction I had was perfect. It was like all I wanted from we had just finished and we were kind of leaving our dressing room to kind of go walk down and get like a spot to watch them play. And as we were walking, they were getting golf carted to the stage, each in their own golf cart, but Flea was on the top of his golf cart, like kind of standing, like surfing on it. And I was like, okay, well, that's perfect, right? And like they drove by and they gave us like the clap and we said thank you. And then I thought that was nice. That's all I needed, right? But then later on after the show, I was going into the hotel, and as I'm walking in, Flea is walking in at the same time. And we were actually like going through the door at the same time. And I like, he looks at me, I look at him, and I go, Flea. And he goes, hi. I go, I'm Dallas. He goes, hi. I go, I just opened for your band. And he goes, oh yeah, I didn't see it. And I was like, no, that's cool, man. I didn't, I was just telling you. And he goes, and this is it. Like, I'm going to take this to my grave. He looks at me and he goes, gigs, it's what we do. and that was it. And then off into the night we went, and it was like that. To me, that was perfect. It was like,
Let me
I love that. I love that.
Pink hair, fluorescent pink hair.
He's incredible.
Lakers sweatpants on. Gigs, it's what we do.
Let me use Flea as a jump off point.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite music documentaries is Let's Get Lost, Chet Baker story. Flea's a big fan. And some people might be surprised that that Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers grew up and has always been a big fan of Chet Baker. Is there one person that we would be surprised, one band, one performer that you could cite now that people might not say, that people would say, I didn't know that this person or this band was an influence on Dallas Green?
I think the one that I would say that, like, most people that know me know this by now because I've said it enough, but I think Sade is one of my biggest influences for multiple reasons. Sade is watching my mother listen to Sade when I was younger. Like Love Deluxe, that record with No Ordinary Love and Feel No Pain. And like that record is in my top 5. That's like a desert island record for me. It became that as I got older and became obsessed with music and melody and the female voice. And but watching my mother listen to Sade when I was younger and seeing my mom's sort of face which I would go on to realize this was my mom's like, she's feeling it face. You know, like people have that, like they hear a song and they go, oh, something like that. I have this total just memory burned in my mind of watching my mom listen and sort of like, it's a real, as somebody who went on to want to make people react that way with music I make, that's like a real moment for me, right? With Sade. But then I just love her music and I love her vulnerable songwriting and I love her sense of melody, you know? And if you listen to my music, I think if I point out, like if you listen to this part, I'm trying to do this Sade thing here. And when I explain it to people totally get it, you know? But I don't think that's the first thing you're going to think of when you listen to me.
Wow.
I remember when I was in high school, there was a time for about a year where she was in music. She was like the hottest thing that existed.
Yeah. I love her career too, by the way. Like she's only made like over like what, a 30-year career. She's only made like 5 or 6 full-length records. Mm-hmm. She takes like these 10-year breaks. Mm-hmm. She goes away. Her work speaks for itself. You know, she's never been this like flamboyant. She chose like, you know, the pop, that sort of like biggest thing in the world could have swallowed her up, but she got out of it. You know, so there's like all these things that I just really respect about her.
Elliotte heard me tell the story before. And the first time he smiled and giggled, we'll see if I get the same thing out of him this time. I'm always curious about musicians finishing a song and when they end it. My wife's an artist. She paints, she draws, has wood burning. And one time I asked her, I said, how do you know when it's done? How do you know when to walk away? Like, how do you know when it's finished? And she said to me, and she put on this like phony, really pretentious voice, and she said, Jeffrey, art is never finished, only abandoned.
Yeah,
I do love that.
That's great.
I think it's really fun.
You like the performance of it.
Yeah, I do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Complete disdain for the question.
How dare you ask
No, but
me a question? How do you finish?
Yeah, I agree with her. I think, especially like for someone like me who's like, I write the songs, I arrange the songs, I produce the records, so I'm in it for the whole process. So it's difficult for me to remove myself from it and say it's over, you know? And I think if I did have my way, I would probably not release anything. I do need people to tell me that it's done in a way. Do you know what I'm saying?
So you need someone to step in and say,
editor.
Yeah, because you'll just keep tweaking it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, and I think it goes back to that conversation about the difference between, you know, sports and having the winner and a loser, and with a record, it's like, it is still just a snapshot of that moment, right? Like, I don't play these songs. As soon as I start playing live, the songs change immediately because it's that version and it's the next version. So the record is just a snapshot of this moment in time when you were creating this idea. You're only going to create the thing the one time, right? So it's like, yeah, how do you find, there is no real end to it. You have to just sort of decipher, this is it. I feel good about it. You know, it's almost that. You just sort of like, you allow yourself to say it's done. It's that. You have to. Sorry, you have to allow yourself, right?
Let me circle back to that conversation quickly about Ryan O'Reilly. And we're looking for, like, we do a hockey podcast.
Right.
You're an amazing musician. We're looking for these intersection points.
What Jeff is trying to
between
say
the
that there's
two of
no
them.
reason for you to be talking to either of the two of us.
Like,
That's what Jeff
but no,
is
I love
saying.
it.
what
though,
we're
right?
saying is, like, you're slumming it this afternoon, Dallas. Like, you must be like really bored this afternoon to hang out with me and Elliotte. But
No,
these
are my favorite kind of chats.
we're looking for like these intersection points,
Yeah.
okay? And sometimes when interviews, like when people from sports interview musicians, a lot of it seems really forced. And the one thing, I was thinking about this on the way over here today and saying to myself, you know, the one place where music and sports really intersects is sort of under the umbrella of obsession. And you don't get to where you're at in hockey. For example, you mentioned Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Unless you're obsessed for a long time
Yeah.
about what you do. And Dallas, you didn't get to where you are without being obsessed.
Yeah.
Does that change as you age? I mean, what the old saying, obsession is a young person's game, like blah, blah, blah. But does it change at all? Does the nature, is the way that you're obsessed about music now different than when you were 20 years younger?
I don't think so. You know, I think there's more in my life, so there's less time to obsess just specifically about it.
Yep.
You know, when I was younger and it really took hold of me, it was like that thing that you would find in like Rye or any of these guys who just said, okay, I understand what I have to dedicate myself to, whether it's going to work or not, you know? And that's sort of what I was when I was a kid. Like it just became this thing that not only that I was obsessed with, but also that I could see it fit in with the way my personality worked. You know, I felt like I had some pretty good work ethic already there, whether it was trying to land a 360 flip all day while I was skateboarding on the same thing, and you know, or trying to make the basketball team even though I was short, or you know, trying to figure out a song on guitar when I was young that I couldn't, you know, all these things of like dedicating your time to something and like truly obsessing over something. They were all there. But I don't think it's changed in that same way, because I think about the pandemic, and I think the first couple of months, like everybody else, I definitely like leaned into the dread of the unknown and what's going on. But as soon as I had that sort of realization that, oh, I have all this time, I have nothing to do but be obsessed with this thing that I'm completely head over heels in love with. And I made 2 records, you know? Like as soon as I realized all I had was time to give into the obsession, I was more creative than I've ever been in my entire life, you know? So I would be mistaken if I said it's gotten less. I'd think almost more.
A sidebar to that is practice.
Right.
As a musician. And well, listen, for this podcast, we talk about athletes and practice. But as far as a musician goes, I'm obsessed with John Coltrane. And I can't stop listening to John Coltrane. I can't stop reading anything about John Coltrane. And I was reading something a couple of months ago, and someone said the thing about that made John Coltrane so great is he practiced like he had no talent.
Right.
And again, that was first of all, that was his obsession. But he practiced as if he didn't belong there.
Yeah.
How do you practice?
Well, that's part of like going back to asking me, like, does success change you, or do you feel like you're different after you play these big shows or whatever? No, because I probably would have got off stage pretty stoked about that gig opening for Rage, but I probably 5 minutes later would have started going through all the things I screwed up, you know, or I sang poorly in my own mind. So for me, I'm always wanting to be better. So I'm always trying to find new avenues with my voice. I'm always trying to be a better singer. I'm always trying to be better at playing guitar. I know some people who just like, they grow up and they don't want to write songs on the guitar anymore because it bores them, because they've been doing it for so long. And I think to myself, wow, isn't that nice to just be bored of the endless possibilities the guitar has in store for you? You know, I've never been bored by it, because I look at it days, I'll pick up the guitar and go, I don't have any idea how to play this thing, you know? And I want to figure out something new, and I want to get better at it, because now I don't know what that, like, where that lies deeply in me. You know, that could be rooted in some other obsessive thing where, you know, never satisfied, or we could go crazy into that whole side of it. But I think there's a responsibility to be better. You know what I mean? To want to get better, to practice. If you're given the opportunity to do this thing that you love and that you want to do, I don't think there's ever there's no end guy.
Do you feel like you owe it to someone or something?
Yeah, you owe it to the opportunity that you were given. That's the way I've always treated it.
I like that.
Because I understand like where I started, which was the very bottom. And, you know, we built all this kind of with lots of different groups of people have come and gone, but this simple idea that we could succeed on our own terms, right? But we built it from nothing, and it grew into this large thing. So I understand what nothing is, you know? I've toured enough and played for nobody to understand what that feels like, so that every time I get to go out and play in front of people, I'm grateful for it. And I feel the responsibility to be good. Every time somebody walks into a room that they've paid, you know, whatever they've paid to come see me, parking and babysitters and all of that, you know, And that is also, that's tied into being, practicing and making sure that you're at the top of your game, At least that's how I've always just done it, right? It works for me too, right? Like it makes me feel like I'm doing something good.
What was your I've made it moment? The moment that you realized that this was going to be more than a dream and it was actually going to be your profession?
It's hard to probably there's been some funny moments where I've just kind of realized, okay, my life is different now, for sure. Like I tell this story a lot, but the day I was walking around the West Edmonton Mall, because I was there to play a show with Alexis at they have a venue there.
Yep.
It used to be called Reds. Then it was called Eds. Now I don't know if it's called Reds again.
D's, like they keep on subtracting
exactly,
letters.
right?
Yeah.
But I was walking around and they have a skating rink there.
Yeah.
So I was walking on the second level and I kind of stopped to look at all the people skating, and I sort of started to realize that my song Save Your Scissors from the First City in Color record was playing on the radio. And all of these young girls were like just figure skating on the ice at the mall to one of my songs from my solo band. And I was about to play a show with my other band. And I thought, I was probably 25 or 26 at that point. And I was just like, okay, this is different,
So save your scissors for someone else's skin. My surface is so tough, I don't think the blade will dig in. Save your strength.
And then I feel like those next 5 years were really strange for me, where it just sort of like both bands were happening, and there was just, there was a real like, okay, I can do this now.
Was it overwhelming?
Yeah, man. Of course it was. It's
I always wonder how you handle that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole
one of the things that one of the things that Elliotte and I have talked about, the nature of greatness and the nature of talent, and the idea that one of the best things I think that creative people, successful people have is, as we said before on the podcast, the talent to manage your own talent, which is its own thing very much. There's been a lot of, you've met them, we've all met really talented people that never get to the place that they want to get to because they just can't get their thing together, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So how do you have the talent to manage your talent?
Well, Joel and Trisha were very important and have been very important in this whole thing. Joel Carey, Trisha Ricciuto, my managers, who I've known since I was 15 years old, Having people like that in my life, who Christina, my publicist, who's been with me the whole time, having people that you trust around you as things are getting crazy is very helpful. I will say that, But I think because, I think all of us, like the guys in Alexis and stuff, these last few years, we've started to kind of realize how weird our life has been, with like, I think for so long we were just doing it, and then we weren't, and then I just continued doing it, that the odd nature of like starting a screamo band in St. Catharines, Ontario, and then it like becoming popular, and you're on Much Music when you're like, the guys in the band were in high school, and then I'm 25 years old and girls are figure skating to my one song on the radio. You these things are like, you were younger and you thought about these things, and now you're going through that, like we were talking about earlier, like you're trying not to let it change you because it's what you wanted, and you're just like, I'm just a musician. That's how I look at it. I'm a songwriter. So there was a lot of moments where we could have lost it, and I think we've done a really good job of navigating how crazy the waters have been in this whole 20-year journey that we've been all doing it. But I think the fact that we're all still together and we're all still like succeeding is a testament to how everybody managed the situation.
That's not easy.
No, it's not.
Because even your best friends or your best partner, there's going to be times you blow up at each other.
Yeah.
And you've really got to love someone to hate someone.
Absolutely. Like we Alexis, we won Rock Album of the Year at the Junos last month. And that's a weird sentence to say, because there was a long time where you just never thought anything like that was possible. But Georgie, our singer, somebody asked him a question like, what's the secret to the longevity of your band? And George said, it turns out breaking up your band is great for the longevity of your band. You know what I mean?
It's true.
So it's like, I feel like it's how we've managed all of those times. All of those like
What's the
trouble.
biggest fight you guys ever had?
I quit the band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that probably wasn't even our biggest fight, actually. That was just like, okay, we have many bigger fights than that. Yeah. But they're all, I don't think they're good stories for the internet.
Oh, I actually, that makes me think they're great stories for the internet.
It might be, yeah. I'll have to get some release forms from the guys before I start speaking out of school like that.
Did you see the Firefest documentary?
Oh, yeah.
And did you see what was the other one on Netflix?
I've played festivals like that.
Yeah, that was my question. What was the other one on Netflix? I'm forgetting the name of it now. It was the big one in the 90s, but
the Woodstock.
Woodstock,
one.
yeah,
Oh,
like
God,
the wood, yeah, like so. I want like, have you ever played anything like that or seen anything like that?
I mean, not to the Firefest
Woodstock
extent,
thing,
because like that was just like, you flew all those people there, and Woodstock was obviously like but I've played so many different festivals like that around the world, and like it's so crazy because if you only knew how poorly run so many of these things were, like we got to last March, so when it was time, we're going to go back out on the road, we're going to try it. Alexis, we started, our first show after the pandemic was Lollapalooza in Chile.
Wow.
It's just at the big, like, fly to Chile and play at Lollapalooza, the big giant festival, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, just throw yourself into the fire and see if it still works, right? But I remember we got to the festival, all of our crew and stuff had gone early to set up. We were playing like mid-afternoon, maybe closer to dinner. So you usually, it's a big thing like that, you get there, you try to get there an hour before, maybe 2 hours. Depends on if there's like a band you want to see, or because it's what you do, right? It's like you know what a festival's like. You don't necessarily want to go until you're playing. Mm-hmm. But we showed up, and the guy who was driving us he didn't know where our stage was. He just couldn't find it. So we just...
This your Hello Cleveland Spinal Tap moment?
We get into the festival grounds, and like I'm calling our tour manager, Juice. I'm like, Juice, where's the stage? And he's like, the guy knows where it is. I'm like, he does not know where it is, And he doesn't speak any English, and none of us speak Spanish. And so he's going this way, and I'm like looking out the window, and I see the stage, and he's going this way, he's going left. And we spent 50 minutes in the van on the festival grounds just trying to find the stage. Like now I'm on the phone, standing in the van, screaming at our tour manager, Juice, he doesn't know where it is, and Wade, our other guitar player, he's trying to talk to the guy, and then the guy's pulling over. He's driving now through the festival crowd in the van.
Oh, wow.
He's pulling over, and he's like asking random strangers, do you know where this stage is? Do you know where this is? Finally we just, we get there an hour later and play the show, and it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. But like that is touring in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right there. The show is almost the last thing possible, right? It's all just moments like that. As far as like crazy riots and things like that, I've thankfully never been around for all the shows I've played, just goofy stuff like that.
Yeah.
That
you can handle.
Oh yeah, that stuff, it becomes the best part of the story. Mm-hmm.
Okay, criticism.
Sure.
So I mentioned I was a big John Coltrane fan, huge Frank Zappa fan.
Yes.
He once said, and he hated critics, like deeply, deeply hated critics. And he would say, writing about music is like dancing about architecture.
Okay.
That was one of his big ones. How do you handle criticism? This is something that Elliotte and I deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
This is something that athletes, hockey players, everybody deals, especially now in the social media world.
Yeah.
We all deal with. How do you handle it?
Well, I mean, a good way that I deal with this is I don't go on social media. That's very helpful. Mm-hmm. I've never tweeted, which is nice.
I like how you say that proudly.
That makes you like the smartest man at this table.
Feels good.
Yeah.
We have a Twitter, but my team does
Staff
that.
handles that.
I've never made it about me. So that's helpful. So I don't really go on there just to read the good or the bad. But as far as criticism goes, like I've been dealing with it long enough that I understand that it's just part of it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've never been under the assumption that I was going to make music that everybody would like. You know, I don't like everything. I'm very opinionated. I'm critical of other things. So of course people would be critical about my own music. So for me, part of it is, if I do find myself, watching something on YouTube or whatever, and then I start venturing into the comments, I do appreciate a real good zinger once in a while regarding myself. I think those ones stand out to me because I just think they're funny. Like I do really like when somebody's like actively mean, because it's funny. I can see.
So you could read mean tweets, like that.
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to. I think it's I just think it's hilarious, But there's a deeper thing for me with that. Like I love just a good zinger, but I also love that that's what this person's contributing. That's funny to me. But as far as like a journalist writing something critical about my art or whatever, like I never really pay attention to much of it. But I also it goes back to that not letting things change you. I don't pay too much attention to the good either. Like I take a compliment and I appreciate it, but I try not to let it sway the way I would then go on and create. I always try to create from a place of, let me make something that appeases this thing in me that I need, that I've always needed since I was a kid. Writing, creating, singing, all of this. Let me make something that I can be proud of and then just let it grow wings. That's how it's always been for me. So I appreciate when people, like I said, we won Rock Album of the Year. That's beautiful. It's amazing. But this is what I'll end it by saying this. I recently heard Mos Def or Yassine Bey say, "It is not for me to treat my gift as an achievement. It is what I do with my gift that is the achievement." And I just thought that was the most beautiful way to put it, right? So yeah, in this hypercritical world, I just try not to pay attention to any of it.
It's great stuff, smart stuff, great advice. So I want to ask, what's your dream gig? Like if somebody came up to you, Dallas, and said, you get to do this.
You know what I've done? I've done a lot of them.
Good for you.
I really have. I've been really lucky to have played a lot of the buildings I was wanted to play. I've gotten to meet and play with a lot of these people that I respected when I was younger, like touring with Alice in Chains or meeting Ben Harper, who was a big one for me when I was younger.
Nice.
Like he's opening for us this summer at Bud Stage, which will be amazing. But like meeting Ben a couple of years ago was really, really big for me because and then I after I met him, I went out and opened for him at Red Rocks in Colorado, which was a huge, I got to play the Greek, I opened for him at the Hollywood Bowl in LA. So I've gotten to play a bunch of these really beautiful places around the world. And I think a lot of the places I never really thought I would end up in are some of my favorite places too. Just weird random, when we played in Adelaide, Australia for the first time, I never could have imagined myself being there. And that show is still in my top 5, So I played the Royal Albert Hall in London, England.
That's awesome.
I really feel grateful for all of the opportunities I've already had. So I think for me, the dream really would just be able to continue to do it.
Do you have you mentioned Ben Harper a second ago, and right away my brain going, so one of my favorite live albums, Live at Mars.
Yeah, man.
It's just fantastic. Do you have a favorite or some favorite live albums?
Neil's Live at Massey Hall.
That's phenomenal.
Is that was a really, really important record for me. Just because, because it's just him by himself, which I was sort of when I started making that type of music, just standing by myself with a guitar, it's hard not to look at Neil as a North Star, right? But listening to the vulnerability of that record where he's he's working on Heart of Gold and he's working on Man Needs a Maid and he plays them. He's like, I wrote this song about a ranch I just bought. There's an old man and he just sings the old man because he's working on Old Man, right? At Massey Hall, that record is
It's a great call.
And then really another one just for importance of being younger, like sitting and listening to the Woodstock live, like the record with my dad, being young and him like, you know, showing me Santana's performance or 10 years after and then watching the concert, you know, that was big. Just seeing like being young and seeing like live music on such a scale. It was like impactful.
Let me ask you about the latest.
Yeah.
Tell us about the latest album.
Yeah, it's called The Love Still Held Me Near. I wrote, most of the songs are sort of rooted in grief and experiencing a lot of loss in my life in that period. But for me, I think it's more about the journey through that. And I think it's a hopeful record. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write this one?
We need hope.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I was sort of ending up, you know. It was like instead of leaning into the grieving side of it, I thought I'd try to lean into how do you get through that, you know. But so for me it was I started writing the songs in February of 2020. That was probably when I wrote the first bit of the first song, and by I guess I was done by December that year, you know. But like I said, I kind of went through that crazy creative period where we wrote all the Alexis songs, and I wrote all these songs in like a 7-month stretch of just sort of explosive creativity.
The reason I'm always curious about, you know, how long it takes someone to create something like that is, and maybe I'm sure you've found this, sometimes you feel like a song doesn't fit with this album, but you know what, one that you wrote 10 years ago might, you know, with a fresh coat of paint.
Yeah, there's a song. There's a song on this record called "The Water Is Coming" that I wrote originally for my last record, and it was the version that I recorded for my last record and didn't put on is very dark and very, very hopeless. And you know, I was writing it from a very, very negative perspective, and I think I left it off the record because of that. And then as I was kind of unearthing some older ideas just to see what was in there, because that's always fun to kind of mine a few of, you know, Nick Cave, he doesn't like doing that. He warns against going back to the old stuff, but I like mining it. I always think there's something, you know, you left it off for a reason, but it was created for a reason, you know? But so I went back and took this song and literally rewrote it from a hopeful perspective. And it became this, like, one of my favorite songs on the record, because it needed exactly what you said. It just needed a new coat of paint. Knocked down a few walls in it too, actually. Yeah, open it up a little bit. Let some light in.
A true renovation.
Right. Yeah.
Off with the beggar's head. Is this the fate we face?
This may sound like a weird one, and I don't even maybe know what I'm asking, but I'm going to throw this out there anyway. You know, we're in this wonderful spot, and I'm looking at your new album, and I'm thinking about things that I loved listening to on vinyl.
Yeah.
More than, like, when I listened to, like, Robert Johnson, I wanted to hear Robert Johnson on vinyl, right? Where do you think your music fits best?
I would say vinyl. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Why vinyl?
Would any musicians say otherwise?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to be from a certain, like, because I don't think, like, I also don't think that's the right answer. You know what I mean? It's just my right answer.
Yeah.
Because there's kids that are making insane, beautiful music on iPhones to be listened to on an iPhone, you know? And that's how they create, and that's how but I think just for me, coming from the era of something physical to go along with the song, where you're like, you know, you create the record to be put on and sat and listened to. I mean, that's the dream of an artist, is you want to make a record, you want to put all this time and effort into a record and have somebody sit and spend some time with it, you know? Now, obviously streaming and all of that has, like, thrown that completely out the window, but at the same time, vinyl's never been more popular than it is right now.
That's great.
You know? And I think there are a lot of people who used to love it who are realizing that they could still love it now. And then I think there's a lot of young kids who are like, I want to hold something, you know, like, I want to see
and see artwork.
And I want to open up the jacket, and I want to and I want to flip the record, and I want to have it be tactile, like a tactile experience to go along. And it's not just like in the ether. So that would be my answer.
I love it. This has been a lot of fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks,
This has
guys.
been
Thanks
great.
for
Dallas,
coming.
thanks so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming to our spot.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.